One of the tools I think has been the most helpful for me throughout my life, and after I decided to be more conscious and to realize that maybe things were not that much of coincidences, and if this happens to you as well, has been astrology. Astrology has helped me out realize about my mental and my behavioral patterns. And that's why I would like to share more about astrology with an expert. I have here an amazing guest, which is one of the best astrologers I've ever met. And her name is Giorgia Pecora. Welcome, Giorgia. How are you?
I'm good. I also want to say you pronounce my surname right. And it's one of the first times. Yes, I'm really good. I'm having a good time. And I'm really happy to have this conversation with you today because, as you mentioned, beside the astrology, we're also friends. So when I have friends inviting me over their projects, my Aquarian self, that most of you don't know what does that mean yet, gets very excited. All things are friends and groups and talking astrology. I'm a girl, a service.
Yeah, that's wonderful. If we would like to start, can you share us, like in your natural way, as you always share it, how did you come with astrology? How did you start exploring astrology as a tool for your personal growth, or how did it come to your life?
I always say when people ask me this question, there is, I think, this collective magic idea that when you're working with esoteric things or astrological things, that you were born into it, right? So not my case. In my case, it's like I was born in the south of Italy. I'm from Sicily. No one apparently, I'm going to go back to this later, apparently had this interest into the astrological world. And I just always had it. Like since I was, I think, 12, I started reading books about astrology, and I would go to my parents and be like, I want to become an astrologer. And they're like, no, it's not a thing. But I think the element that I want to bring in today regarding that, most astrologers, that's what I see talking to my colleagues, is probably the element of crisis. When we're working with specific tools like this one, sometimes it feels that you're not choosing them, they are choosing you. I feel like Urania, that is the goddess of astrology. Sometimes I feel like I'm being called to be a translator of the art. But things go quite serious in a very big transformational moment of my life. Always been quite, I would say, probably intuitive and curious. But I remember that the first time I read my astrological profile back in the day, I feel like getting older. It was like at the beginning of the internet, of reading some things around my chart about like my sun. It's just like how you shine, what you stand for. We're all unique in different ways. And each one of us has a sun in a certain position that is giving certain talents. And my sun is in house number 12. Probably Diana know what that is. The house number 12 is the house of the unseen, is the house of magic, but it's also the house of prisons, it's the house of temples, of hospitals. It's an area that is a bit gray. And I remember back then reading about, oh, there's going to be lots of solitude and you're just going to have to spend time on your own. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not sure like that much. But then within the years, I start to understand what was that about. Is this connection with the unseen. I love all things spiritual, but since I've always been connected to them, you know, what is your reality? You think is our personal reality is the reality. But the more I start digging into all the subjects, the more I was just excited about life. And since I was going through this big crisis when I was 24, the first big crush, the end of a long-term relationship, I was applying for jobs after my master, I won't get anything, I relocated to a new country, just like everything as I knew it just fell apart. And I started going to this astro cafe, to this astrological group, just to find like-minded people. And that was the moment. That was the moment in which the goddess of astrology took me, and that was incredibly helpful to navigate the crisis I was going through. That's the reason why the more I work with it, the more I get to the point of I want to do this professionally, because I see it. So you were saying how helpful this could be. If you're in the middle of a tornado, that you know that you are in the middle of it, this helps your sense making, right? I don't know if that answered your question. I was going a bit tangency on that, but yeah.
No. Actually, my next question was related with that. A lot of people think that astrology is just used for its predictions, right? But now with all your experience, with your personal experience as well, but the knowledge you've gathered, how would you define it for a person that doesn't know what it is? And how do you think it can help people to understand themselves better and to navigate those seasons, as you were saying?
The astrology that we know, this pop astrology from newspaper, is called sun-based astrology. So it's just about the sun, right? But the thing is, when you're working with astrology, there's so much more than that. We work with 12 elements instead of one. And actually, for example, when we're working with predicting the future, I don't love to call them prediction. I love to call them preparation. What I do with people is like, we got this 1 year. This year, the priority is, career. Where are you at with your work? What you would like to reach? Which are your fears? And there are like all these layers unfolding. It's a co-creative process. But on a more practical level, what is astrology to me is always a bit difficult question to answer as an astrologer. Because for some people, it's a philosophy. For some people, it's a system. For some people, it's a science. I think for me, it's a practice. It's just like, it's literally like living accordingly to your talents, observing which are your blind spots, because many times we know, but we don't do anything about it. But when you see this in the system, it's almost a pattern recognition, because you got like this chart, you got this drawing, so you got the symbolic language that is telling you how your psyche organizes experience. If I know that in this place I'm sensitive, in this other one I'm conditioned, on this other one there are some potential lies that are repeating to myself, on this other area there is like a loop that I'm in because my parents were in the same loop. Can you imagine how much power we can have with it? Just like, I could see which are the keys to unlock certain parts of myself, but what astrology does is to show you all the doors. It's like all the doors are there, but it's up to you, of course, to jump, because I can tell you, Diana, according to your chart, you could be an amazing writer. That's your case, actually. But if you don't write any books, or if you don't take part to any talks, or if you don't open a website, not much is going to happen out of it, right? Same applies to astrology. We can recognize the patterns in which we are. Yeah.
Actually, if you just get into astrology, right? You just get to know this tool for the first time. What are the key things you would tell a person for them to start understanding their patterns through this tool?
What I usually do with clients when I have the first foundational chart reading, we look at what's going on. I work with them on 3 different levels: personal, interpersonal, and transpersonal, because everything is interconnected. First, what makes you unique? What makes you special? What is your superpower? Why did you decide to incarnate? Because in so many ways we are interconnected, but in some other ways we are unique. I want to start from that. Just what makes you shine? The sun. And the moon is like, how do you react to the things around you? How you act, how you react, and how you're showing yourself into the world. Because we have this idea that we're very linear, but actually we're not. Because it might happen, you love to shine in something, but your reactions are literally the opposite. And we have to find ways to cohabit with that. We look at you, your talents, your emotions, and then we expand into relationships, friendships. It's like we're talking about any sorts of relationships. Because when I usually say the word relationships, we take for granted partners, love partners, but it could be friends, it could be co-founders. And I tell people what could be certain energies to attract that are good for us. Because many times we have friends that are not that great for us, but we have them just because we don't think really, right? Then we look like how we can connect with others with our potential. And then on a transpersonal level, we analyze what can you offer to the community, because all of us, we all have something that we can resonate on a collective level, on a macro level, and which are the teachings that we need to integrate from the outside world through mentors, through teachers, through parents, through the state. You see, it's already lots of information to work with.
Definitely, and I think it's a wonderful point of view, because people now can understand that it's just not the pop astrology, but it really has depth, and you can get to navigate your own depths and your own psyche through astrology, which is actually why I myself use it as well. I would like maybe just a few tips for you. Let's say, what are the common placements people, in a basic manner, of course, if they want to have a profound session with a person, they should go to a professional in order, not for them, not because, what I speak here in my channel is more like you have to be your own guide, right? So not to depend in others, but at the same time, when you gather the wisdom from the things that are unconscious, right, or from the patterns that are unconscious, you get to have the messages that are maybe you were just meant to know by this person, right? Taking that into account, that considering that you can go to an expert, but like the basic things that a person may know, what are like the basic placements you can suggest for a person to?
Yeah, for like starting sun, moon, and the ascendant, I would say. The sun is like the way in which you shine, the way in which you can bring yourself out into the world. And once you will see like the drawing, how it looks like, it's divided like in 12 slices, in astrology we call houses. So once you see in which slice your sun is located, one of the invitations, because you see they're all invitations, would be to try to bring some light in that part of your life. Let's say you have the sun in the house number 3, that is house of communication. And if you look online, you find the keywords for the 12 houses. This is the house of communication, it's the house of environment, it's the house of the short-term like transportation, it's the house of events. The suggestion here would be, in order to shine, being out there, move around. It's like the journalist archetype. Just explore. Or the house number 10, that is the house of career, public, how we are seen. Just try to find a way in order to be seen in the outer world. It's almost like a game to me. Just like if there are all these possibilities, what happens if we play with them? With the moon, has to do with the world of feelings. This is where we are really sensitive. So if we feel emotionally disconnected, we want to look in that area. Let's say your moon and your feeling is now number 3. The house number 3, it's just not the house of communication, it's also the house of siblings. It would be interesting for me to know, do you talk about your emotion to your siblings? It's also your relatives. Do you have someone you share your emotional journey with at the moment? Or is in the house number 7, it's the house of relationships. Are you with a partner that is interested, you can talk to on a deeper emotional level, a person that is very sensitive? We want to cultivate them more. And then the third element is the ascendant. In order to have a clear ascendant, you need to know your time of birth. If you don't know it, in many countries, part of the birth certificate, like in Italy, you will find it. In the UK, you won't. It really depends on the rules of your country. But sometimes if you call your hospital, they usually have still the data stored, or you can ask your relatives. Someone may know something, like you have an idea, and then there is this uncle that is like, remember where you were born? For example, with my sister, it was the last night of this very famous Italian festival. This is called Festival di Sanremo. It's like Eurovision in Italy. And my mom was like, I remember that my water broke at the beginning of the last night of the final. It's at 9, you know what time it starts. And she's like, by the time I get to the hospital, it was so hard because there were not many people working, because literally the country stops for like 3 days. And she was like, it was literally almost midnight and it was at the beginning of the show. There is always, you see, some interesting details that come up out of it. And if you have the time, you got the ascendant, and the ascendant has to do with the way in which we initiate things. Let's say you get some piece of furniture from IKEA, right? And the ascendant is telling you, if you have an Aries ascendant, Aries is like the one that's being patient. It would be the one that would just open everything and just going to try to sort it out. Then you got the Virgo ascendant, that would be the one that's like, okay, let's look at all the distraction. I have Aquarius ascendant, that's to do with technology and internet. I always ask Reddit. Every time I have questions on someone asked this on Reddit before. I can remember going camping with a friend of mine, and we had this very weird tent. And she was like, I have no idea. I was like, wait a minute. And then I asked on the internet. And I was like, oh, and there was this guy on Reddit literally writing the same. Like, okay, I don't know how to deal with this. This is what the ascendant tells you. You see how I act, how I react, how I'm bringing myself into the world. It's already 3 main information that you can easily find online.
Wonderful. And I think it's important to know that it's a personal and unique footprint. There's no charts that are the same, because usually people tend to say, oh, no, I don't like astrology, or I don't believe in astrology, because they compare or say that everyone is the same. But that's not actually how real astrology works. I would like to make this tiny stop for you. If you have a very rational person, what I usually do, for example, is that I tell them, you live in a floating rock. Did you know that this planet is a floating rock that has next to it another tiny floating rock right next to it, and you're trying to be rational, right? How do you explain that to a person, let's say maybe part of your family or people that are not that much into this? How can you introduce astrology to them?
I think there are two aspects to this question. The first one thing that I don't do is try to impose what I'm doing to others. What I mean by that, I see especially this with my students. I had this the same when I started, because you're so excited, you see works, that you're like, Diana, I'm studying this astrology course, can I look at your chart? It's important that the person comes to you with this sort of curiosities. I don't want to convince you of something you're not interested in the first place, because it would be a waste of time for everyone, right? My invitation is, whatever system you're working with, if a person is not asking you for that, ask yourself why you want to bring this out to them. Saying that, if we are in a cafe and someone is asking me about that, just because I have this all the time, I'm quite scared, because they talk to me and they feel like she looks smart. So it's she's smart, but she's doing something that seems stupid. That is, in terms of an argument that you could bring, is that we are mostly made of water. And when we're looking at the moon and the sun, and everything is connected to animals, to plants, to tides, everything is according to the cycles of nature. But our anthropocentric view that we are so above everything, that's what's also happening in the way which we deal with resources, right? We're so much above nature. We are not part of that. Considering the complexity of who we are, do you really think that we are not conditioned by external? We have our external environment, in the sense with the family. We know much how families are conditioning us, right? Imagine the environment on a bigger scale. And here I can't convince you, because there are some colleagues of mine that see as a science, they're doing all the scientific work. There are more than 50 types of astrology. I'm not on the scientific side. I'm on the woo-woo magical side. I'm okay with that. It's the symbolism of it. It's just people are it's just magic. I can't imagine a life without magic. How boring that would be. Because people are I'm hyper-rational. And I think that's a bit of a general collective problem. Why are we defending rationalism so much? Life is not that rational, by the way. All things happen all the time for the weirdest reasons. And once you start to play with this magic, I was sharing this today, you see all the signs, the environment talks to you. If you just look, as much planets are talking to you. Many times it happened, I had this dinner with this guy that I met on the cafe 2 days ago, and it was I'm from Sicily, and it's oh, interesting. I lived in my hometown for 1 year, and so then we were chatting, and it was oh, I know this guy. Do you know this guy? Not really. I left many years ago, and then I'm just leaving, and I'm going to pay, and then I went out, and it was you can't believe what just happened. Well, the person we just talked about, I haven't talked to him in 6 months. It just sent me a message. All these small things that you're of course, everything could be a coincidence, for sure. But then there is the matter of energetics. It's really a matter of energetics. It depends on the level of openness and awareness that people have on these subjects.
How your microcosmos interacts with the macrocosmos is something that we need to understand, because we are not just the main character of a movie and we are alone. No, we actually co-interact, as you say.
And it's also empowering if you think of it. We notice this, we call good vibes, bad vibes. How many times, if we are next to someone that has this really sucking, drying energy, it's going to start sucking us as well. At the same time, we could do exactly the opposite. Okay, what if I integrate, accept the fact that I can actually influence my environment in a way that could be expanding, and telling you with the school of expansion, they could really expand in the things around you. And this is going to have a domino effect. It's unavoidable. Because you see just oh, wow, this is and how beautiful there is. But that also requires a certain level of responsibility and trusting the unknown. And we don't like to trust the unknown.
Do you think that how we talk about planets, because people are going to say, oh no, you're going to tell me now that Mercury is retrograde and now that planet is going to do something to me? Or is it more like, if we can explain it in another way, since astrology, the logic part, which means that we give meaning to some energies that we go interact with, how do you define that, or how you explain? Of course, the planet, it's actually in the reality moving this way, it's going backwards, but at the same time, it reflects in your internal system, in your internal ecosystem, the same energy. How do you explain that to a person?
You know, when we're looking at this element of transits, predictive astrology, they activate something in your psyche, but there's not a replacement. This is not a blank psyche. We have to think that we have our personal history, temperament, coping strategies, nervous system regulation based on our traumas, blah, 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 blah. There's also the reason why two people that were born exactly at the same time, at the same day, in the same hospital, because there's also the other argument. Are you going to tell me that the people that were born the 22nd January 88 in Palermo is going to be all astrologers? Unfortunately not, because we need more astrologers. But why? Because everything is the consequence of the choice that you made. As this we were saying, oh, Diana, your chart does say a great talent with writing, and then there is someone else that maybe is bringing this out there, third house. We also know it has to do with means of transport, is a taxi driver. And then you just see the results of our small choices, amplifying in different directions, right? With these planets being there are invitation. There is a symbolism. We are not inventing anything new, but this has to do with the way in which the person makes sense of things. Does Mercury retrograde screw things on a social? It does. It does, until people are like, oh, you're just noticing this in certain specific moment in time. The problem is that once you start to see the pattern, again, it's a pattern thing. There is a pattern recognition there that is quite fascinating. And I'm like, maybe it's a wild coincidence, and maybe I'm delusional. It's a possibility, but I'm like, this would be a very massive illusion to live with, because I've been doing this for 10 years. And then I'm like, was the beginning of the Mercury retrograde. The preparation is not a great time. If you're sending things, it's not about not doing things, but again, it's a game. You double check stuff. What happened? I'm ordering a parcel, and then I'm like, oh, damn it. The parcel is arriving in the wrong place, and then I'm calling this postal office, and then I'm like, oh, we cannot find the code. And I'm like, maybe it was not that smart doing this in this certain time, because they sent me the email that was like, oh, the parcel is here, and it just went to spam for no reason, and they had same kind of company before. With this, is like, there's not much of a technical, rational argument that you could bring. You can roll with it or not, and it's fine if you don't believe in that. And that's interesting, because people are like, give me the reason. I don't know. I just observe. I'm observing what's happening around us with the gravitational field, and something is happening. Since Mercury has been like with the retrograde, we had already two big crash. Yesterday was the same. We just had, internet is keeping on crashing, and probably there's going to be another one in a couple of days. But anyway. I don't know if this is giving you an exhaustive answer, but that.
No, I think it's a very good conversation to have, to make people go deeper and to understand this into a deeper way. We were talking at the beginning that there are moments like what happened in your case and what happened in my case as well. There are crossroads in your life in which you need to find a tool or something that really helps you out, like to gain clarity, right? How would you explain that astrology can help you do that? I know that you already have explained it throughout this call, but maybe you can offer some more information into how can astrology can help you gather clarity, especially during those moments of transitions or challenges.
It helps you to make sense of what is going on. Also, we have some specific times, like for example, when you're 29 or when you're 41, that we have some collective threshold. But the idea is that you could see when there is an activation period, a peak, a resolution, a window of opportunity. If you're like, Giorgia, I want to buy a house. What does my chart say, right? And with that, we could see many layers. Do we want to buy a house because you're in a relationship and you feel insecure and you're just trying to control the relationship in an unconscious way? Or is actually a good moment to settle down? As an astrologer, I can kind of track what is the unconscious motivation that is inviting a person to do something. And what I do is just to bring this into awareness. That's all I do. I'm like, oh, it's interesting because here you want to buy a house, but also what I'm seeing, because many times people come with an intention, but there is something else around it. But at the same time, I'm seeing some sort of a big turning point in the love relationships in which you have been. How are these two things coming together? What does your partner think about this? What happens is that we have conversations about things that we usually don't talk about, or we don't talk about in that way, or I make you realize some elements that you didn't consider in the first place.
Good. For instance, in my case, for example, when I came to astrology, I also had a lot of curiosity about astrology since I was very young. But the moment I will say, like, I really wanted to use it for real was exactly when I ended up a long-term relationship, and I was like crazy. But the thing is that the astrologer that I had the consultation with, she told me that my mom is going to die. And actually the transit that was happening at that time was because my moon in Gemini, I was going to have an eclipse in my moon, right? So maybe that was a death, if she could say something in me was dying. But I think that a person like you can help people. Like, astrology is not to condition yourself into gaining.
Because this brings harm. This brings harm, Diana. You see, I'm interrupting you because I can feel like it's just the anger that comes up. It's just like, because that's the problem. Like every profession, we could do good or we could do harm. One of the things that I offer, because I do courses, I have students, and I have students that want to become professionals. And I offer mentoring to them. We spend 9 months, we do a reading. And I listen to the readings, and it's not about it's about what you deliver. And it's the same with psychology. You could be the best student ever, but if you don't know how to talk with one of your patients, the result is not going to be great. Because as an astrologer, you see, if you want to buy a house, and then I see that there are other dynamics, we're going to have a conversation about it. Do you want to buy with your partner? Did you live with him before? Did you have experiences of co-living before? How was growing up for you? Did you have your own space? You see, this is giving us space to almost like brainstorm. And that's so interesting, because when you bring all these elements in, you see when the person is activated. Something is coming. If I'm going to tell you your mother's going to die, how am I helping you here? You're going to get anxious. You're going to get paranoid. This is not good astrology. And then, like everything, we got good astrologers and bad astrologers. I give you another example. I have this a lot, because I have lots of clients. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm not the cheapest one. Many times people go to some people that maybe are starting just because they see a lower price. I'm not saying, and I'm gonna make this clear, expensive equal better quality, cheap. No, but in Italian we say how much you eat for how much you pay sometimes, you know? So sometimes there are people that have been doing a bit of readings or reading some books that are astrologers, because our profession is not regulated, unfortunately. And this is another conversation for another time. But what happens is that people just throw shit at others. This woman comes to me the other day. She was like, I got Uranus, the planet of chaos and disruption, in the house number 7. That is the house of marriage, is the house of relating, is the house of 101. And she's like, an astrologer told me that I'll never have a stable relationship. How then saying something like that to a person that is 35? It's just because then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Uranus, looking at the ultra, it could mean a trillion things. But here, there is an interest for people that are being unusual, for example, or someone that is quite original. In astrology, we would say someone that is quite Uranian, something that's lots of Aquarius in their chart, like me. My ex-partners had this position, because you're attracted to weirdos. That is it, that's different. It's like here, what I would say to a client would be like, oh, it's interesting because you got the planet of things that are a bit unusual in the house of relating and marriage. Would you say that maybe you have a different idea about what marriage should look like in relationship to your parents, in relationship to your culture? If you have to find some words to describe your partner or your ex-partners, there was something specifically different about them, and did it just turn something different within you? This creates conversation and inputs, but not always the case. Sometimes you go to an astrologer and they're just going to throw stuff at you. It's also because of the client, because of course, but the client doesn't know. So it's on us, astrologers, bringing that back on track, because sometimes people are like, tell me what to do. And I'm like, I can tell you what the timeline is. I can tell you what the problem is. You take the answer. Of course, if I see that right now you want to buy a house and you have the planet of unclarity on top of you until December, what I would tell my client would be, look, doesn't look clear what you're doing with your life. What I would do before just buying a house, get someone like to double check the contract, to check the foundation, to check that everything is fine. Also, are you in a rush? Like, what is that? Again, it's the nuance. It's really important, because otherwise then it becomes like you're putting a cross on someone, and that is not okay. I'm done with the ranting. Thank you.
No. I think it's amazing. Thank you so much for all the amazing nutrition you're giving us today. I would like to ask you two last questions. And the first one would be like, yes, because I've seen, and this is personal, I, as a friend that I've been studying astrology, and I've also worked as an astrologer for a while. And I've seen that it's been popular, getting popular more with the time, which is actually good. I don't think it's bad. It's wonderful that people get to know astrology more, right?
Yeah, totally.
Of course, I see that there's people, as you said, that are playing to be the gurus, and it's good that astrology gets well known, but at another note, it's more like another way for the pop culture with so many gurus out there. My perspective, my personal perspective will be that in the future, it's wonderful. I think that everyone should have this tool to take informed decisions, right? To have your own guidance as well for yourselves. If everyone would know about astrology, that would be perfect, and they will go like professors like you. That's my personal perspective. What is your perspective in terms of the globalization of astrology, or how can people get to know it better? What is your perspective in all of this that I'm saying?
You got like two options. You can complain about it because you got the gatekeeper, so you could do something about it. In my case, I do courses. I do courses that are quite structured, that are fun in their own way, but it's like, you gotta study. We go homework. I'm like, my personal contribution is that one. Just like I have a school, because I feel that in order to really understand the process, you need to go there. At the same time, we got different flavors for different people, because of course, not everyone wants to learn astrology. Not everyone wants to go that deep. Some people just looking at like a TikTok and some reels. It's not that it's just a reductionist version of astrology. Like most topics, because of course also you see like with meditations or self-help stuff, or you do the Reiki course, but no one wants to do the 21 days of daily practice. I think we got different flavors for different needs. Of course, this doesn't help us that we are in the more technical part of it, but I personally don't care. Like, if I would care, I wouldn't be able to do this job, because it would be so stressed. At the beginning, I used to be stressed about it, because I'm seeing this right now. I'm in this co-working space called Living Co-working Project, and it's just people from all over. There's no one that knows about this. And people are like, oh, can you tell me about the future? Can you tell me if next year I'm going to win the lottery? And there are these things that are like, oh my God. So sometimes it's a bit frustrating, but I don't see this as a form of harm. It's just, as long as people talk about it, that's good. But as astrologers, my invitation is, instead of complaining about things that are not great in our community, ask which kind of contributions we can make.
Wonderful.
So.
Good. If you would like to send a final message for people to get to know you more and to get to know more astrology, I just leave the microphone to you.
You see this part, I was like, yeah, whatever. That's the part in me that's like, if people want to learn astrology for themselves, like I do a self-development course. It's more like all the things that I'm doing. There is like a community. I'm interested in the community aspects of things. There is the group, we look at the charts together, we play with it, and you learn step by step tons of things about yourself. And every time I try to explain the amount of things you can see about yourself, I don't even know how to do it. Because every time people actually study and then enroll to courses, also have one-on-one sessions that are like, wow, I never imagined that you could get so much out of it. In terms of general message, play with magic. Play with magic. It's with astrology, it's with tarot, it's with other things. It's like, it's fun. It could be really fun. That's the invitation. But once you open that door, once you become conscious of certain things, then you can't close the door anymore. That's also the warning. Just like you know that when we work with consciousness, and then we have to see to the results of the things that we find along the way. And that's the difficult part we don't talk about, because until we don't know, it's all good. But once it's hard.
And I think it's easier when we are used as well to other people, because either way, the news were telling people what to do or what not to do, or how have fears or not. Now, I think it's important, either if you do it with magic or other tools, to regain or remain conscious of the magical tool or non-magical tool that you're using, with respect, and also with an Aquarian, to be able to see as well from the outside, to be able to make a choice and to have an informed decision, even though you have all these answers. Let's say you have tarot and you have your astrology reading, and then you have the runes, and then you have so many things. Because that, I'm saying that personally because I'm a Gemini moon, and as a Gemini moon, I have seen like so many sources. And I don't know if it happens with everyone, but in my case, like, I got lost in so many tools because maybe I was desperate, right? I was like trying to get more information. It's to remain conscious of my own inner guide as well, because these tools are to help us, to guide us, as you were saying, but not to make the choices for us.
But you see, it's the same problem as earlier. It's just like any tool, when it becomes a form of control, it's very important to keep the symbolic aspect to that. It's just like, it's almost like, there is a message to me. There is a bird that is bringing some ideas. To use what we want as a brainstorming. Because if you just keep on coming and getting, I see this a lot. People have all the read, and I'm like, you could have all the readings and stuff. I asked a client the other day, she was like, I'm in session with you, but first I went to all these other people. And then I'm like, okay, what is the answer you're wishing to get? So let's start from there. What is the answer that you want to get out of this, and why? You see, and I see the same, like we know with tarot, we pick a card of the day from time to time just to see the vibe of the day. And then I'm like, there is this thing about communication. I'm like, maybe today's a good day to send an email and see if something comes out of that. And then people write back, it's like, oh, wow, you sent this thing today? Perfect time. And when we talk about magic, also I don't want this to be just this fluffy idea, because I think even is the invitation in playing in a way that is not your usual way. Also with the things that you're doing, even when we're talking about attachment theory, we have an idea that things has to be in a certain way because we've been dealing with life in a certain way. And then the question is, maybe by accident, you saw one of Diana's videos on YouTube and you got this idea, try it out and see what happens there. Instead of starting to making the analysis of all your ex because they were narcissists, let's go back to you for a minute. What's happening there? I don't know if this is answering your question.
It really answers it.
Good.
All right. So how can people contact you, Giorgia?
I'm very active on Instagram as a good millennial. My profile is called visionary.astrology. My website is visionaryastrology.org. Or you can send pigeons or just emails at the contact form on the website. And I write this, I call it, it's a cult. I write these new letters every 2 weeks that people love, that are for free, about new moons and full moons, and that are very juicy. That are like exercises, journaling questions. It's not about like you're gonna die, but the question is like, there is this new moon is bringing some questions around your finances. Maybe you're gonna find an exercise about, look at your bank account. What do we do here? That could be a good way to approach my work without feeling overwhelmed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Giorgia, for joining us and for giving us that pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Ciao.
Ciao.